Well, think of that awesome responsibility. They stand on the front lines of history every day, guarding the commander-in-chief's every move, and 50 years ago, something happened. Something fell through under their watch. Imagine being the Secret Service, the first time that happened since its foundation, and they lose a president. To this day, Secret Service agents still struggle with what they call survivor's guilt. Dan Bongino is a former agent. He's author of Life Inside the Bubble. It's a fascinating read. He was protecting President Obama, among other things. Dan, very good to have you. You and I were briefly chatting about this. What do you think fell through that day?
Well, I think one of the big things was the lack of intelligence sharing. You know, Oswald had an FBI file. The CIA knew about Oswald as well. Oddly enough, the Secret Service had no idea. Back then, the intelligence sharing was minimal at best. There was almost no footprint at Langley or anything like that. So now there's robust intelligence sharing.
But obviously that didn't work prior to 9/11. They weren't sharing stuff, right? So
yeah, well, it's still a problem, and it's never going to be perfected. I actually address it in the book. The siloed agencies are a big problem. But yeah, the Secret Service now has a lot of back and forth between even local police. You know, local police may know something the FBI doesn't. Hey, that guy in the corner is a drug dealer. He may not have an FBI file, but that's really good to know.
Dan, what's changed since that assassination? We don't see too many presidential motorcades.
Yeah.
What changed?
Well, having been in the transportation section twice, I did 2 stints over there. The way we handle motorcade security in general has completely changed. We view it now like a deadly diamond, we call it. In other words, there's 2 things you know at any site. You know where the president's going to land, and you know where he's going to be. He's going to land at an airport, and he's going to go to, well, whatever, a Gracie Mansion. So those are the 2 knowns. If they're the 2 knowns, they're the 2 most dangerous spots in that diamond. Because if you know, the assassin knows as well. It's probably been in the paper. In the middle of the diamond's that variability, that motorcade variability. He's going to down first, second, third. You don't know that. So that's where we start to play with it a bit. And when you view it in that text, that's when you can reallocate your assets. And the way we do things now is completely different.
All right, but that day, of course, everyone in Dallas and his uncle knew the exact route of the president's motorcade, including Lee Harvey Oswald. But we've seen other instances of this. With Ronald Reagan, they knew that day he was going to come out of the Hilton after giving a speech. So if you have nefarious intentions in mind, you'll know where to be and when to be there. So what do we do?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the Hilton, because we changed that. We realized after that given the tips of that diamond were our 2 most dangerous areas, because there was no randomness to it, we don't do open arrivals anymore. Everything's covered now.
When you say covered, what does that mean?
The limo will say, when the limo would pull up and the president used to get out and wave, you rarely see that anymore. The president will usually go into a tent.
Or so you can't see him, you can't get an aerial view of him, nothing.
Yeah, you can't shoot what you can't see. I mean, you could, but the likelihood of you hitting someone is very slim. So we do covered arrivals now. And the Hilton, the Hinckley Hilton, as we call it in the Secret Service, where Reagan was tragically shot that day, they now have built a special place for us just to pull in. So it's that's a total.
How do you battle, Dan? You touched on this a little bit, and you and I have talked about it a lot. A president who wants to be with the people, like we're told that Jack Kennedy that day did not want to blow stuff up, even though it's not bulletproof, and maybe it would have deflected a bullet, it's hard to say, but that he wanted to be seen. This was all about the political fence-mending trip. He didn't want anything to obstruct, down to an agent being on the car.
Yeah.
When the president says that you're working to protect him, as you did with Barack Obama, what do you do? What do you say?
It's a constant battle, Neil. This friction between the staff, it's not really the president and us. The president will really listen to what we say. He knows we have his best interests in mind.
Well, in JFK's case, he was apparently very insistent on.
Yeah, I saw that in the report. He said once politics and protection don't mix, and maybe it was because it had been so long since something serious had happened. I think every president, they're only human, has to have in the back of his mind the Kennedy assassination and the Reagan shot as well. But the staff doesn't see it that way, and there's always a lot of friction with the staff. They'd rather just throw him in the crowd unprotected, and of course we'd rather keep him in a steel box, and that's really where the art rather than the science of protection comes in.
We've quieted them off and sheltered them off from people as a result of these multiple attacks. Where do you weigh the balance?
Yeah, it's tough, and that's really where you have to get with the staff and say, well, tell you what, instead of a rope line, can we use bike rack instead? Rather than using just literally a rope to go across, can we use bike rack, and can we rack them together and put weights on the bottom so it's a more sturdy barrier? The visual's no different. Over the president's shoulder, that camera shot you're used to seeing, you're going to see the same thing. So we filled your role, the optics, the visuals, the aesthetics were the same, and you filled ours, you gave us a good barrier.
Real quickly, as a guy who protected President Obama, didn't personally agree with President Obama, now you're running as a Republican for Congress, but you would take a bullet for President Obama.
Yeah, I liked him very much personally. Him and his family were very good to me.
But that was your job.
I would have done it in a heartbeat.
Fellow agents, and again, we could work with a Democrat, Republican, they may not agree with him, but your job is literally to die for the President of the United States.
I would have done it in a heartbeat, proudly. I mean it. It really was something I felt very passionately about.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Dan, thank you very, very much. In the meantime,